Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. Lisa's hand slid up my husband's thigh during dinner. My name is Emily, I am 28. I was the one who cooked, who planned this friendly night. I was the one who watched her fingers crawl higher. You know that jolt when something feels wrong instantly? That was my whole body at once, locked to my chair. Mark stood in the doorway earlier and checked his phone. He told me Jason and Lisa were almost here already. He kissed my cheek fast and missed my mouth. I caught that tiny miss and let it slide. Back then I still did that. I smoothed things over. The doorbell rang and everything switched into host mode. Jason walked in first with a loud joke and grin. Lisa followed right behind him with a bottle and smile. She brushed past me and pulled Mark into a hug. Her arms stayed around him a beat longer than mine. "Smells amazing in here," she said it near his neck. I laughed and wiped my hands on a towel. "Yeah, your brother remembered to invite you, so lucky." She rolled her eyes at me and moved closer to Mark. I told myself not to read into one casual hug. When we sat down, she slid into the chair beside him. Jason dropped into the seat across and nudged my glass. "You need more, Em. This week was insane," he smirked. I took a sip, not because I wanted to. I wanted my chair between Lisa and my husband. They started with work stories and old college nonsense. I joined in at first, laughing in the right spots. Lisa kept leaning toward Mark, shoulder pressed against his arm. Every time she laughed, she tilted herself closer to him. It looked playful from the outside, it felt loaded. Under the table, her foot knocked mine by accident. She apologized quickly, then left her leg stretched out. It lined up right next to his instead of mine. I shifted, tried to bump Mark's ankle like a signal. He glanced at me and then back at Jason. "Another toast," Lisa lifted her glass toward the middle. "To surviving the week and not killing our coworkers." Mark clinked her glass first, then came toward mine. That small order hit me harder than the alcohol did. I told myself I was overthinking. I still swallowed. Jason started a story about some disaster at his job. Mark leaned in, elbows on the table, eyes on Jason. Lisa leaned in too and crowded his space without hesitation. Her hand rested on the edge of his chair casually. My pulse tracked that hand, not the story, not the laughs. The moment shifted in one quiet second under the table. Her fingers left the chair and disappeared under the cloth. I felt the air change before I saw his shift. Mark's shoulders tensed, then relaxed like he made a decision. When I looked down, I saw her hand on his thigh. It was not a quick touch, it was settled. Her nails traced a slow line toward his knee joint. His hand stayed on his fork, his eyes on Jason. He did not move her hand, did not flinch away. I felt my face heat like I was the guilty one. "Everything good, Em?" Jason asked and grabbed more bread. His voice sounded far away, like through a thin wall. "Yeah, I'm great, just hot from cooking and all." My voice came out tight, brighter than I intended. Lisa's mouth curled, she kept her eyes on her plate. I tried the foot signal again, harder this time. My toes knocked Mark's ankle, then his shin sharp. He flicked his eyes at me, quick, almost annoyed. Then he forced a small smile and lifted his glass. "To Emily's cooking, she keeps us all alive somehow." I raised my glass with them, my hand not steady. Underneath, her fingers slid higher and squeezed his leg. Mark inhaled slightly, then laughed at his own weak joke. Jason did not look under the table, he never did. He just watched my face and frowned like something smelled off. "So Lisa, how's the dating world? Still chaos?" I asked. I aimed the question like a knife away from Mark. She shrugged and finally pulled her hand back a little. Then she smiled and rested it again, now closer. "Men are boring, I stick with the safe ones." She glanced at Mark on the word safe and smirked. He stared into his drink like the answer sat there. I waited for him to crack a joke, redirect anything. He just chuckled under his breath and shook his head. That silence from him felt louder than any confession. "You're quiet tonight, Mark, losing your touch already." Lisa nudged his shoulder like they shared some private bit. "I'm conserving energy, someone has to drive later." He finally looked at me when he said the last part. It sounded like a performance, not like actual concern. "Relax, nobody's driving yet, we just got started." Lisa topped off his glass without asking if he wanted. She spilled a drop on his wrist and grabbed it. Her thumb rubbed the spot clean slow like it mattered. My stomach flipped, though technically she only cleaned up wine. I laughed, but that laugh had too much edge in it. You'll have him wasted before dessert, then you vanish. She met my eyes, no apollo. Jai anywhere on her face. If he can't handle it, that's on him, right? Her hand found his thigh again, like that proved her point. Jason cleared his throat and asked about a sports game. He looked between us, reading the tension, then looked away. I answered too fast and too loud just to fill. Nobody bought it, I could tell from Jason's tight jaw. I still pretended we were fine. I hated myself for that. Time stretched in those little gestures and tiny pauses. The whole table became a map of touch and distance. My fork clinked against the plate more than it needed. Mark kept making these thin jokes that landed and died. Lisa laughed at everyone like he was killing it. Dessert, I stood up because I needed to move. My legs felt stiff, like I had been bracing for impact. Lisa let her hand drop from his thigh slowly, no rush. She's a great host, right, Mark? You married well. She winked at him like she was grading her own work. In the kitchen, I leaned on the counter to breathe. From the dining room, I heard them still laughing together. Not all of it was about me, I know that. Back then my brain still tried to be fair. Now it just remembers her hand and his silence. I pulled myself together and took the dessert in. Jason thanked me and pushed his chair back a little. Lisa stayed planted next to Mark like a glued shadow. She rested her elbow on the back of his chair. I set the plates down and felt like a stranger serving. Come sit, Em, you're making us look bad, Jason joked. He patted the chair across from Mark and nodded. I sat and folded my hands in my lap tightly. This is what kills me now, how normal it looked. Anyone walking in would have thought we were close friends. During dessert, Lisa started a game she called Confession Bites. You take a bite, you answer something honest, no lying. She scooped a spoonful, then pointed it right at me. Emily first, biggest crush you ever had besides Mark? I almost choked, the question too messy for fake fun. I played along anyway, because I did that back then. I gave some safe story about a teacher, nothing real. They laughed, the moment moved, but my chest stayed tight. Then she turned the spoon toward my husband with a grin. Your turn, biggest temptation you've ever had while married. He hesitated, spoon halfway, eyes flicking straight to me. I watched his throat work, my own mouth suddenly dry. Jason whistled softly, trying to lighten what she just asked. Damn, going straight for the jugular, relax a little. Lisa giggled, leaning closer so her shoulder pressed his hard. It's a game, not a trial, breathe, you two. She nudged his arm again, the touch looked almost automatic. Mark smiled, that practiced crooked smile that hides discomfort. Honestly, I try not to think like that, it helps. He finally took the bite, ending the question without details. That should have comforted me, but it did not. I saw the way Lisa watched him dodge and slide away. Her expression said she heard what he did not say. I knew right there this line between them was thin. I still pushed the feeling down because guests were watching. When the plates were empty, Jason checked the time once. We should get going, early start for me tomorrow anyway. He stood and stretched, already reaching for his jacket. I started stacking dishes because moving felt safer than talking. Behind me, I heard Lisa scrape her chair back slowly. At the door, Jason hugged me quick and genuine, like always. He thanked me again and told me to text more often. Then Lisa stepped in, arms already wide, eyes on Mark. She hugged me first light, her cheek barely touching mine. Thanks for feeding us, you really are the responsible one. Before I could answer, she turned and wrapped Mark up. Her body pressed full against his, no space between them. One hand slid behind his neck, the other on his back. He patted her shoulder in this awkward half-push. She did not move away until she was ready, not him. Take care of my favorite husband, she laughed toward me. The joke landed like a stone in the middle of us. Jason called her from the hallway, already halfway to the elevator. She finally let go and grabbed her bag with a grin. When the door closed, the house felt different, almost tilted. I locked it and turned, the latch louder than usual. Mark stood there with his hands in his pockets. For a second we just stared, nobody sure who spoke first. This was fun, right? Everyone seemed to have a good time. He said it too fast, like he wanted the sentence finished. Did you seriously not notice her all over you tonight? The words came out sharper than I planned, but honest. His jaw tightened just a twitch, then loosened again. She was just drinking and joking, you know how she is. He moved past me toward the kitchen without waiting. I watched his back and felt something cold settle in. I did not follow him right away, I stayed there. My hand rested on the locked door, palm flat, weirdly shaky. In that exact moment, I knew I would write this someday. Because that was the first time our home did not feel safe. "Why didn't you move her?" I asked before his coffee finished pouring. He paused with the mug halfway to his mouth. Water still ran in the sink, way too loud between us. "You're starting the day like this," he rubbed his forehead. My chest beat hard, but I kept my voice steady. "I watched her grope your leg and you just let her." His shoulders dropped like I was the one exhausting him. "She was drunk and screwing around, that's how she is." He finally faced me, eyes already defensive and tired. "You know Lisa, she hangs on everyone, it means nothing." Hearing him explain my reality away made my skin crawl. I leaned on the counter so I would not shake. "Everyone does not slide their hand up your thigh." My words came out slower that time, heavier and clearer. He shrugged and took a long sip like he needed courage. "You made it awkward, you could have just relaxed." That line still burns when I think about it now. I made it awkward, not the woman under the table. Relaxing apparently meant ignoring someone clutching my husband like a toy. "You realize Jason saw her too, right? I'm not crazy." His jaw tightened, then he put the cup down harder. "Jason laughed, nobody cared except you, that's the point." He pointed at the doorway, like the problem lived there. "She's practically family, she always acts like that with friends." He let out a short, bitter laugh and shook his head. "You're twisting an inside joke into some cheating conspiracy thriller." That last part hit me like a cheap slap in public. My face went hot, not from guilt, just sheer frustration. "You want to talk about twisting?" Because my brain remembers everything. I moved closer, close enough to smell his morning breath. "Her fingers stayed on your leg for half the dinner." He dragged a hand over his face and turned away. "You're exaggerating in your head, you know you do that." There it was, the old card, my overthinking, my fault. He grabbed his keys and his bag from the chair. "We'll talk later when you've cooled off and thought clearly." He walked out while I still had 4 arguments ready. The door shut with that soft, dull click that ruins mornings. I stood alone in a quiet kitchen suddenly full of noise. Every sound felt wrong, too sharp, too fake, too much. Back then I still believed if I found better words he'd listen. Later that week he called from the car on his way home. "Jason wants to stop by, he's got something to show me." I heard his tone, light again as if nothing happened. "Is Lisa coming too?" My stomach knew the answer already. A short pause on the line told me more than yes. When they arrived, I opened the door with my guard up. Jason walked in first, arms wide, carrying some new gadget. Lisa drifted in after him, smile bright, eyes sweeping everything. She made a beeline straight for Mark standing behind me. Her arms wrapped around him from the back like a cloak. He laughed, that buzzing, nervous kind of laugh he uses. "Ambush hug, guess that's my welcome tonight." His shoulders tensed. Her chin rested on his shoulder, way too comfortable, way practiced. I watched her fingers resting on his chest like she belonged there. "Did you miss us or only my cooking?" I forced a grin. Lisa finally peeled herself away and turned toward me slowly. "Both obviously, but he's the only one who texts back." She bumped his arm with her elbow, casual like muscle memory. My insides dropped even lower hearing that little detail tossed casually. He did not deny it, he just laughed and scratched his neck. We ended up in the living room, some game on. Jason dropped onto the couch and started fiddling with the remote. I sat near the other end, leaving space near Mark. Lisa took that gap without hesitation, thighs pressed right against his. I watched the cushion dip under both of them, tight and close. During the first commercial, Jason leaned forward and groaned dramatically. "My back is killing me, I need a chiropractor like yesterday." Lisa laughed and stretched her arms over her head, slow and easy. "I give amazing massages, right Mark, you can vouch." I stared at her, waiting for him to shut that down. He chuckled quiet, eyes locked on the screen in front. "She does know what she's doing, I'll give her that." It sounded harmless on paper, written here in plain text. In that room it landed like permission, like a green light. My fingers dug into my knees so I did not react. Want a sample, big brother? I can fix that spine. She moved behind Jason and dug her thumbs into his shoulders. He groaned, partly joking, partly actually relieved by the pressure. She looked over his head at Mark while she worked. That look made my throat close more than the touch itself. Minutes later she circled around the couch and stopped. Head behind Mark. You're always hunched over that computer, you're next on the table. Before I could answer, her hands landed on his shoulders firmly. He stiffened for a second, then let himself sink back. I watched his eyes close like it felt way too good. You good? Jason tossed a popcorn kernel at him and laughed. Yeah, this is dangerous, I could fall asleep like this. That line might have been harmless maybe, if not for everything. Her thumbs dug into the base of his neck, slow and deep. She leaned down so her mouth hovered near his ear on purpose. I stood up too fast, the room tipping for a second. I'm going to grab some water, anyone else want something? My voice sounded normal to them, I practiced normal my whole life. Nobody answered right away, they were all wrapped in their game. Behind me her fingers kept working into his muscles, unbothered and steady. In the kitchen I gripped the counter until my nails hurt. I heard muffled cheering, another play, their voices blending too easily. Part of me wanted to storm in and yank her off. Another part knew that would turn into a joke at my expense. So I stood there fighting myself, hating that frozen indecision. When I went back in, the dynamic had shifted again. Lisa had moved from behind him to right beside him. One of his arms rested along the back of the couch. Her head rested against that arm like a pillow she owned. Jason glanced at me once quick, then looked back at the screen. Come sit, Emily, you're pacing like a nervous parent at rehearsal. Jason patted the empty spot near the coffee table and grinned. I sat but my focus stayed fixed on that contact. Their bodies touched from shoulder to knee, like they shared a secret shell. Nothing in that room technically broke a rule, and that killed me. After they left, I locked the door again out of habit. He dropped onto the couch and grabbed his phone immediately. I watched his thumbs move fast, sending something to someone. My heart pounded, convinced I already knew who he was messaging. Texting Jason about the game, I asked, trying to sound bored. He glanced up, then laid the phone face down on the cushion. Yeah, we're just talking about a rematch, why? Everything in me wanted to scream, to demand proof right there. Instead I asked something softer, because that was my pattern then. Do you really not see how close she gets to you? He groaned and let his head fall back against the couch. We are not doing this every time they visit, seriously. His eyes closed, arms spread out, posture full of irritation. You're obsessed with every move she makes, it's exhausting. The word obsessed hit harder than I expected, cutting deeper than yelling. You're my partner and she touches you like you're hers. My voice trembled but I did not lower the volume. I'm not inventing that, it's right there in front of us. He sat up, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, breathing heavier. If I thought there was anything real there, I'd shut it down. I remember that line perfectly because I clung to it later. At the time it sounded like reassurance, a lifeline I grabbed. Now it reads like a loophole, like careful lawyer language. If I thought left the whole thing inside his head alone. He never asked how it felt inside mine, not once. The next time we all hung out, things escalated again. Movie night at our place, simple, that was the plan. Jason brought snacks, dropped them on the counter and wandered off. Lisa waltzed in behind him and pulled Mark into a spin. You're my dance partner until the previews finish, let's go. She twirled under his arm in the middle of the living room. He laughed and moved with her, not clumsy at all. Their bodies brushed more than the dance required, that much was obvious. I watched from the doorway with a bowl in my hands. I knew if I spoke up right then, I'd be the punchline. When the movie started, we ended up squeezed onto one couch. Jason took the corner, then me, then Mark near the middle. Lisa came last and dropped straight into the small gap beside him. Halfway through she announced there was no room for her legs. Before anyone could answer, she swung one over his knees. It looked playful if you glanced quick, just people crowding together. Her calf settled across his lap, her heel nudging my thigh. He shifted a little and adjusted the blanket across both of them. The move might have been innocent, but it covered everything. I sat there under the same blanket, feeling like an outsider at home. At one point, she pretended to get scared by a loud scene. She grabbed his arm with both hands and clung hard. Her body practically folded against his side, face near his chest. He chuckled low and squeezed her hand once before loosening. Jason, on the other end, watched the screen like nothing happened. I could feel my pulse in my teeth by then. Words climbed up my throat and stopped behind my tongue. I got up suddenly with some excuse about refilling my drink. Nobody paused the movie, nobody followed, nobody asked if I was okay. In the kitchen, I finally let my face twist how it wanted. Later that night, when it was just the two of us again, I tried softer. Can we please set some boundaries with her for us? My voice did not shake that time, it surprised me. He rubbed his eyes, clearly worn out, clearly done with the topic. She'll think you hate her, and then Jason will get weird. There it was, laid out in one clean sentence, his priority. Her feelings, Jason's comfort, the group vibe, all stacked above mine. If you trust me, none of this should matter anyway. He looked straight at me when he dropped that line. Trust became a weapon that night, not something we shared. Back then I still believed I could fix this with patience. I told myself I was being careful, not cowardly or passive. I thought if I stayed calm, he would eventually notice the pattern. I did not realize yet that the pattern was useful to him. That night was the start of me watching instead of talking, and it only got worse from there. Lisa's fingers were on his stomach when I turned around. I was at the counter, knife in my hand, pretending to focus. Behind me their voices dropped, low and private, almost swallowed. I heard a soft laugh from her and a murmur from him. When I spun back, she stood close, palms spread under his shirt. He looked down at her like she had just told a secret. For a moment nobody moved, not even me with the knife. Her hand stayed right there, resting over his abs like it lived there. He blinked, then straightened and stepped back half an inch. It was nothing, but it was also way too little. Need help with anything? I asked, grip tight on the handle. Lisa pulled her hand out from under the fabric slowly. She smiled at me like we were trading recipes, not tension. Just stealing your husband for a second, he looked stressed. She brushed past me to the fridge, hip bumping his lightly. He cleared his throat and grabbed a bowl, like that erased everything. Jason walked in then, oblivious, carrying his drink and talking loudly. He launched into some story about traffic, totally drowning our moment. Mark jumped into that topic like it was a lifeboat. I stood there with chopped vegetables in front of me, pulse racing. I knew what I had seen, even if they pretended otherwise. Later, during dinner, they sat in their usual spots around the table. Lisa planted herself beside him again like her chair was reserved. She leaned toward his shoulder whenever she laughed, almost climbing into him. Jason cracked jokes across from me, trying to keep things light. I nodded along and watched every small touch like I was tracking weather. At one point she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. Her hair fell forward, blocking his face from my view completely. His hand drifted toward her back, just resting there, barely touching. He chuckled against her hair, not loud, just enough to sting. When she pulled away, both of them avoided my eyes for a beat. Bathroom break, I pushed back my chair before I exploded. Nobody objected, nobody followed, nobody paused the conversation. In the mirror I stared at my own expression and almost laughed. I looked like someone who had lost an argument she never started. Back then I still believed if I stayed calm, I'd stay in control. After they left that night, the house felt messy in my head. Mark tossed his keys into the tray and stretched like nothing was wrong. That went better than last time, right? Everyone kept it chill. He smiled at me, waiting for agreement, not honesty. Yeah, I muttered, even though my jaw throbbed from clenching. He showered before bed, humming some song behind the locked door. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone in my hand. His phone lit up on the cushion with a short buzz. I glanced at it once, then again like it might bite. The name on the screen made my chest thump so hard I winced. Lisa, tell him he owes me another massage demo lol. That was the exact line, burned into my memory forever. I stared at it, at the smiling preview, at my own reflection. Every part of me yelled to leave it alone, to walk away. Another part, the part that had watched that kitchen whisper, pushed back. By the time I realized which side won, my thumb had already moved. His phone opened without a code, because of course it did. I knew his passcode, but I did not even need it. The message thread slid up to the top of the screen. I told myself I was only checking context, not digging. You already know that was a lie, I knew it too. The first thing I saw was a group chat with 3 names. Jason's, Lisa's, and Mark's, all lined up like a little club. I tapped it and watched the feed rush past my eyes. Jokes about work, memes, random links, nothing explosive at first glance. Then the dates started to line up in my brain. In one by one. Right under a stupid meme, there it was from her. Your face when I got you to relax at dinner, face with tears of joy. My fingers tightened around the phone, knuckles aching, breathing shallow. Under that, his response, sent later the same night. You and those magic hands, you'll get me in trouble. I read that sentence 3 times, each time slower than before. Magic hands, trouble, no pushback, no line drawn anywhere. Lisa answered fast, like she had been waiting for that door. Please, your wife already thinks I'm corrupting you, might as well earn it. There was a wink emoji after that, but honestly the words were enough. His reply was the one that really knocked the air out. Nah, she's just wound tight about physical stuff, she'll get over it. Wound tight about my own marriage, about my own boundaries. I felt something inside me tilt, like a picture falling. He hadn't just minimized my feelings to me, he'd mocked them to her. I scrolled up further, fingers moving on autopilot now. There were little references to nights I remembered clearly. Thanks for the shoulder fix last weekend, slept like a rock. From him, right under a message about Jason's hangout schedule. That was the same weekend I had laid awake staring at the ceiling. Lisa responded with a voice note in that chat, just an icon. I did not play it, my nerves were already shredded. Under it she wrote, next time I'll charge, you're getting premium service. Again, nothing explicitly dirty, but the tone was right on the edge. Jason replied with laughing emojis and a line about needing a turn. That almost helped for a second because it made it look harmless. Like a running bit between 3 people, nothing more. If I squinted hard enough, if I ignored my own gut, I could spin it. Everyone's joking, Emily, you're reading too much into it again. That little voice in my head almost convinced me to stop there. Instead, I backed out of the group chat and froze again. Underneath, another thread sat on the screen in plain sight. Just Lisa's name, no brother, no third person. My thumb hovered over it while water ran down the hall. I swear I felt every drop hit the shower floor through the wall. I opened it, of course I did, you knew I would. The top was tame, older, just small talk and memes. Then the timestamps crept closer to nights that mattered to me. Selfies from her gym, tight sportswear, playful faces, tongue out. Captions like training hard, gotta keep your stress relief in shape. His answers were not what I had hoped for or feared. They sat perfectly in the middle of wrong and defendable. Laughing emojis, you're ridiculous, you're going to break hearts like that. Compliments that stayed just barely on the safe side technically. Nothing that could crush him in court, everything that could crush me privately. The part that sliced deepest was not the pictures. It was the way he used me in their jokes. At one point she wrote, is your boss still making you crazy? He answered, mostly my boss at home, you know how she gets. Followed by, she hates when people touch me, it's a whole thing. I sat there on our couch reading that line over again. Boss at home, it sounds harmless written out here, almost playful. In that moment, I felt like an obstacle they teased behind my back. I had become a punchline inside my own relationship. That realization settled heavier than any image on the screen. The shower shut off, which snapped me back into my body. My pulse jumped, hand suddenly soaked with sweat, screen slippery. I closed the thread and set the phone exactly where it had been. Then I grabbed my own and opened some random app. I tried to hold my face still, like nothing had shifted. He walked out a few minutes later, hair damp, towel around his neck. Everything good, his voice floated in from the hallway, casual. Yeah, I kept my eyes on my phone, pretending to scroll. He dropped down beside me, picked up his from the cushion. For a second his fingers paused on the screen, then kept moving. I watched his reflection in the dark TV, not his actual face. He unlocked his phone and his thumb flew across the glass. A tiny part of me hoped he felt guilty, that he knew. Another part wondered if he was already warning her I might suspect something. I will never know which instinct was closer to the truth. He tossed his phone back down and reached for the remote. "What are you watching?" His tone climbed up into casual husband mode again. "Nothing important." I muted the screen without looking at it. I looked at him instead, really looked like I was studying him. He did not flinch under my stare, not even once. "You trust me, right?" He asked it like it was an easy question. It came out of nowhere, or maybe from his guilty conscience. I swallowed hard enough that my throat hurt, then nodded once. "Do you trust me?" I pushed the words out real slow. He smiled small and confidently. He had just passed a test. Back then I still thought trust meant not checking phones or messages. I thought I had crossed some major line by doing it once. I promised myself I would not look again, that this was a one-time slip. I tried to convince myself the texts were only half as bad as they felt. What I actually did was start living with proof I could not unsee. His screen lit up on the table and my stomach dropped. We were on the couch, some show playing that I barely followed. He laughed at something, reached for his drink, left the phone. The banner slid across the top and I caught 3 words. "Still thinking about earlier," with Lisa's name right under it. His hand snapped out and flipped the phone over fast. I pretended not to notice, but my pulse went wild. "Everything okay?" I kept my eyes on the television, not him. "Work group chat." He took a casual sip that looked forced. It was a terrible lie, even by regular standards, forget spouse standards. He set the phone face down and never let it buzz alone again. From then on his phone moved everywhere with him constantly. To the bathroom, to the fridge, even to the laundry room. That new habit screamed louder than any confession could have. I told myself I was imagining it, then watched him hide notifications. You ever feel gaslit by your own brain before anyone says a word? One night he fell asleep on the couch halfway through a movie. His phone rested in his hand, loose grip, screen still unlocked. A new message popped up and vibrated against his leg twice. I did not touch it, I just leaned closer and read. "Miss your face, when am I stealing you again?" There was no last name on the banner, just her first. The same shortened version he had used in that chat before. I watched his sleeping face while my chest hammered against my ribs. I could have opened the thread right then with one tap. Instead, I slipped my fingers under the phone and placed it aside. I know that sounds wild after everything I had seen already. But there was still a part of me trying to stay fair. I wanted him to tell me on his own somehow. Spoiler, he never did. They never do in stories like this. If you are waiting on a voluntary confession, I feel you. The next crack came a few days later in the kitchen. He stood beside me scrolling while I rinsed dishes after dinner. I watched his expression shift from neutral to entertained in seconds. He bit his lip, shoulders shaking, then tilted the phone my way. "Look what Jason sent, this is actually funny." I glanced down and the image vanished before I could absorb it. The chat window blurred, then closed as his thumb moved quickly. Wrong button, that was his excuse, just automatic reflex, nothing more. Except I had learned his reflexes by then, and that was new. Bad connection, I dried my hands slowly, watching the side of his face. Glitch, he locked the phone and slipped it into his pocket. His free hand grabbed a towel and he changed the subject. He asked about my day in this bright fake tone. I answered, but the words slid past me like background noise. All I could hear was the silence where that screenshot lived. Later that night I walked past the office and heard faint voices. Not full volume, just 2 quiet tones overlapping through a door. He was on his computer with headphones half off one ear. "Yeah, I can see you now, the connection lagged earlier." He laughed in a way he never used with me anymore. I stopped just outside the doorway, out of the webcam angle. On the monitor I saw her face in a small window. Lisa, hair pulled back, leaning closer like she could climb through. He noticed me in the corner of his eye and straightened. "Hold on," he muttered to the screen, then spun his chair. "We're going over something for Jason." He needed a second opinion. His explanation came fast, like he had practiced it before. I glanced at the screen, saw her grin and wave. "Hi troublemaker, we stole your man for a project." She laughed like she owned the whole situation, including my reaction. "You can have him for 10 more minutes," I forced a smile. I'm going to bed, try not to keep him all night. I let the warning hang there, wrapped in light tone, not friendly. He gave me that tight look that says please stop making waves. I walked away before I watched them share another private smirk. Here's the thing I hate admitting now. I still wanted badly to be wrong about them at that point. I wanted some big reasonable explanation that made me feel foolish. Being jealous for no reason would have hurt less than being right. I kept choosing denial like it was loyalty, and it almost destroyed me. The real slide happened the next weekend while he was showering again. I was in the office supposedly checking my email on the shared laptop. A little icon blinked at the bottom, his messaging app still logged in. The temptation felt physical, like a hand on my shoulder push. Ing down. I clicked before the moral debate even finished forming in my head. His chat list exploded onto the screen, a whole stack of conversations. Work friends, family, random contacts, nothing new at first glance. Then I saw her name near the top with a small camera icon. Under it the last line preview read, "Don't let her ruin our fun." My hand went cold on the mouse when I opened it. The thread showed a video call log from that office night earlier. Under it, messages from her came in a playful staccato. "See, group sessions are better when your wife isn't glaring." A selfie attached, tongue between teeth, captioned "Behave or don't." Underneath his response, "You're insane, but you do make the week less boring." You know that rush where you feel both sick and weirdly calm? That hit me right then, like my emotions split into two versions. One wanted to scream into the hallway, the other kept scrolling. Past emojis, past inside jokes, past complaints about me and my rules. Every few lines, there was another little dig at my boundaries. "She watches you like a hawk, I'd lose my mind." That one was from her, sometime after the dinner table incident. He wrote back, "She thinks touch equals cheating, it's exhausting." He added a laughing emoji then, "She just doesn't get our vibe." Reading "our vibe" in that context actually made my vision blur. Then came the part that shoved me over a line I can't uncross. Messages from an afternoon when he said he was stuck late at work. Her, "If you sneak out early I'll bring drinks to celebrate." Him, "Tempting, but I'd never hear the end of it if she finds out." Her, "You're a grown man, not a teenager hiding from his mom." I checked the timestamp on that exchange 3 times. It lined up with a night he had come home exhausted. He had dumped his bag by the door and collapsed on the couch. I had rubbed his shoulders while he acted like the world crushed him. Now I knew he had spent that same day flirting about secret outings. That was not the end of the thread, not even close. A few lines down I saw a deleted message marker from her. Right after it his line, "Your trouble, you know that, right?" Then another deleted entry, then her final, "Guess I'll keep quiet then." My brain immediately filled in the blanks with the worst options possible. I scrolled faster, hungry and scared, like chasing a fire I started. More jokes about stealing him when they hang out as a group. More lines about me not allowing things like he needed permission. At one point he wrote, "She doesn't understand that friends can be close." That line would sound innocent to strangers, but not after those calls. The shower cut off, that sound hitting like a warning siren. I slammed the app closed, fingers clumsy, breath shallow and rough. The cursor hovered over my work inbox as a fake cover. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. It felt like I had about 30 seconds to rewrite my face. He walked into the office in sweatpants, towel around his shoulders. "Thought you were in the living room, what are you doing here?" His eyes flicked to the laptop, quick, measuring distance and risk. Checking some emails, trying to get ahead for the week. My tongue felt thick, but the lie slid out too easily. "Everything okay?" He leaned on the doorway, relaxed on the surface. His gaze lingered on the taskbar like he could see ghosts there. "Fine," I closed the laptop halfway, casual even though my palms shook. He stepped closer and kissed my forehead, light, almost absent. "I'm going to make popcorn, come out when you're done snooping." He grinned like it was a joke, but that word hit direct. I froze, searching his expression for any hint he knew. "Relax, I'm kidding, you look guilty about something though." He tapped my nose, still smiling, then walked back down the hall. I sat there with the half-closed laptop and felt completely exposed. Here's the ugly part, I did not confront him that night either. I rehearsed different openings in my head while we watched a movie. What does our vibe mean to you? Why is she hiding messages? Each question started strong in my mind and died in my throat. By the time the credits rolled, I just felt tired and small. In bed, he scrolled on his phone again, screen dimmed. I watched the glow dance across his features, unreadable from my side. He angled the device away from me automatically without thinking. That chat is wild tonight, you'd lose it if you saw it. He laughed at something on the screen and never looked up. That line was probably meant as a passing comment, maybe teasing. To me, it sounded like a door slamming right in my face. It confirmed what I already knew from that laptop session. Whatever they shared lived in a space I was not allowed to enter. And he liked it that way, he liked having something I could not touch. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting breaths, replaying messages. I could not decide which betrayal cut deeper inside my chest. His words about me, her enjoyment of being forbidden, or his silence. All I knew for sure was this. From that night on, every time his phone lit up, my hands started shaking before I even saw the name. Lisa wrapped both arms around his neck before I was out of the car. We had just pulled into the driveway at the lake place. I was still unbuckling when she ran straight for him. He barely got the door open before she jumped on him. Her legs stayed on the ground, but her body was everywhere. Jason shouted something about party mode and slapped the roof. I climbed out slower, keys in my fist, face already hot. Mark finally eased her grip off and glanced over at me. "See, everyone's here, it'll be good for us," he murmured. That was his promise in the car, over and over. I heard it again in my head and almost laughed. Inside, she clung to him like it was their trip together. She pulled him room to room, calling dibs for the weekend. Jason walked with me instead, tossing random comments over his shoulder. He kept glancing between us like he felt the imbalance. I brushed it off with tight smiles that fooled nobody. When we stepped onto the back deck, she looped her arm through his. "Check this view, this is exactly what we needed." She leaned into his side like they shared one body. He let it happen, hands in his pockets, face relaxed. I stood a few feet away and mentally marked strike one. We headed down toward the water and the joking picked up. Jason shoved Mark toward the edge, childish and loud and friendly. Lisa ran after them, shrieking for someone to toss her in. She grabbed Mark's shirt and used him as a shield. He held her wrists lightly, laughing, not even trying to step away. At one point she pretended to slip and pulled them both forward. They tumbled close, their hands all over each other for balance. I watched his fingers end up around her waist for support. He let them stay a little longer than simple physics demanded. My chest squeezed so hard I had to stare at the ground. "Hey, you two want a second alone, or should we join?" Jason tried to joke it off, voice a little too sharp. Lisa just smirked and dropped her head on Mark's shoulder. "Relax, big brother, I'm just keeping your boy entertained." Her eyes flicked to me right after that and lingered. Later, back inside, drinks appeared faster than I could track. Lisa mixed shots, laughing, daring everyone to keep up. She pressed one into Mark's hand and pushed his arm up. "Come on, you're off duty, loosen up for once." He knocked it back and set the glass down hard. I stayed near the counter, nursing one drink, watching patterns. Every time he tried to move away from her orbit, she followed. Hand on his shoulder, fingers brushing his lower back, constant contact. He did not create distance, he just rolled with it. Each tiny choice stacked in my head like heavy bricks. When the sun went down, she cranked the music and clapped. Game time, couch council, everyone to the living room. Jason grabbed chips and dropped onto one side of the sofa. I took the other end, leaving space in the middle. Mark went to sit beside me, then Lisa slid in first. She landed next to him and slapped her thigh dramatically. "Okay, rule 1, no boring questions, we go for it." She poured fresh drinks into plastic cups and handed them out. "Truth or dare, adults only, last person standing wins bragging rights." I smiled tightly and told myself to just survive the night. It started silly, nothing dangerous at first, just minor stuff. Jason took a dare to text a dumb joke to someone. I admitted some old embarrassing crush and everyone laughed lightly. Then Lisa's turn landed and Jason grinned straight at her. "I dare you to sit in Mark's lap for 2 rounds." I swear the air changed in that second, heavier and strange. She did not act shocked or offended, not even a little. She just grinned, turned, and eased herself onto his thighs. Her back pressed against his chest, her hips settled firmly. My heart did something ugly, like it tripped over itself. Mark gave this half-laugh that sounded more strained than amused. Man, you're ridiculous, this couch is already crowded. He shifted like he might move her off, then didn't. His hands landed nowhere, hanging there, hovering like he was stuck. Jason watched my face instead of them and his smile faded. You're good with this, right? It's just a dare. Jason's question cut through the noise and drove straight at me. 3 pairs of eyes landed on my spot at the end. I felt my skin prickle, like I had been shoved under a spotlight. Why do I have to be okay with everything? I asked. Lisa twisted at the waist and faced me over her shoulder. Because it's harmless, because we're joking, because we're all grown. She lifted her cup and knocked her shoulder into Mark's chest. His arm moved, almost unconsciously, around her for balance. I stared at that arm and tasted something bitter on my tongue. The game rolled on with her still perched over him. Every time she laughed, she rocked back against his stomach. Her hair brushed his jaw, her hands rested over his knees. He kept drinking, kept cracking weak comments, kept letting it happen. I knew then my anger was becoming something sharper and colder. Then Jason drew a card from some pile and brightened. Ooh, this one's good, it's for you, Lisa. He read it out, struggling not to snort halfway through. Give someone of your choice a 5-second body massage. I watched her gaze swing instantly toward my husband like a magnet. She folded her legs to the side and turned fully toward him. Her knees pressed against his hip as she shifted position. That hardly feels like a dare at this point, she teased. Her hand slid under the hem of his shirt in one move. Fingers spread over his abdomen like she had been there before. Mark inhaled sharply, chest rising, then he forced a crooked grin. Timer better be strict, I'm not paying overtime rates, he joked. Nobody reached for a timer, not really, not in any serious way. Jason's eyes bounced between us, worry and discomfort mixing. I waited for my husband to push her hands away, just once. He never did, not during those first seconds that stretched long. Her thumbs moved in slow circles over his skin, deliberate and sure. He exhaled low, almost a groan, then laughed to cover it. That sound cut through me worse than anything, I swear. In that moment I stopped caring if I looked dramatic or controlling. Enough, the word came out loud, sharper than I planned. All 3 of them froze, hands, cups, shoulders, everything suspended. I stood, my legs unsteady, knees actually shaking like cliché. Get off of him, we're done with whatever this is. The silence that followed felt heavy, like it pressed on my chest. Lisa withdrew her hands but stayed on his lap deliberately. Her eyes narrowed slightly, smile gone, full focus on me now. Relax, it's a party game, you're blowing this out of proportion. She folded her arms over her chest and leaned back against him. That movement turned my stomach and lit something hot in my ribs. Mark finally shifted underneath her, uncomfortable for real this time. Maybe we should switch it up, do something else, he muttered. He lifted her by the waist just enough to slide out. Instead of moving to another seat, she landed beside him again. Her thigh stayed pressed to his like nothing had changed. Jason cleared his throat and grabbed the deck of cards. Yeah, maybe we capped the dares there, that one got weird. He tried to laugh but it fell flat in the room. I stood over the coffee table, cup still in my hand. My hands shook so badly the liquid almost sloshed over. This isn't me being jealous for fun, I said slowly. I have asked for boundaries more than once very clearly. My voice wobbled on clearly, but I forced it back down. Lisa rolled her eyes and leaned against the back cushions. Boundaries or barbed wire because it feels like the second. That's enough, I snapped, looking straight at her now. You do not get to palm my husband like a stress toy. Her mouth opened then shut, surprised I went that direct. For a second I thought maybe she would actually apologize. Instead she laughed, a short sharp sound that made my scalp prickle. If you trusted him, this wouldn't bother you this much. She pointed her cup toward Mark like he was Exhibit A. He's not a child, he can say no if he wants. She looked at him on that last word and held it. He stared at the floor instead of meeting either of us. There it was, the choice laid out in front of everyone. He could have stood next to me, even halfway, even clumsily. He could have said, yeah, this crossed a line, my bad. Instead, he exhaled long and dragged his hand over his face. Can we not turn every hangout into a courtroom? He asked. That sentence hit harder than anything she had thrown all night. Every hangout, like I was the one repeating a pattern here. I felt tears stinging, hot and humiliating, but they did not fall. This isn't every hangout, this is you letting her climb you. I gestured between them, my hand shaking, my voice getting rough. Jason slid forward on his seat, palms pressed against his knees. Okay, this is spiraling, maybe we all take a breather. He looked at me, then at Mark, then at his sister. Nobody moved, nobody volunteered to be the first to back down. The silence stretched until my chest actually started to hurt. Mark finally stood, jaw tight, expression carved into annoyance. I'm going out for a smoke with Lisa, I need air. He glanced at Jason, almost apologetic, then avoided my eyes completely. If you want to go cool off upstairs, that might help. That might help felt like being dismissed from my own life. Lisa slid off the couch and followed him toward the door. She did not look sorry, not even embarrassed, just slightly amused. As she passed, she leaned toward my ear for 1 second. You're going to lose him if you keep suffocating everything, she whispered. Then she breezed outside with him like nothing important had happened. The door shut behind them and left a strange quiet behind. Jason scrubbed a hand over his face, looking exhausted and confused. I didn't think that dare would hit like that, he muttered. He watched me like he wanted to help but had no script. I suddenly felt so tired I could barely keep standing. I'm going upstairs, I said, voice low and tight. If he asks, you can tell him I'm done playing along. Jason nodded slowly, eyes full of something close to pity. I turned and climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. Halfway up, I heard laughter through the deck door, low and close. In the bedroom, I shut the door and leaned against it. My hands finally released the cup and it trembled on the dresser. I could hear muffled voices outside, indistinct, still too friendly. I did not know the exact words, but I knew the tone. Out there, I was the problem, and in that moment I realized I might actually leave. The zipper caught on the suitcase and I almost screamed. I yanked it free, teeth clenched, hands shaking over the fabric. Outside the window, the sky was barely turning pale, thin and quiet. The house creaked in that early way that makes every sound louder. Somewhere downstairs a chair settled, and my heart jumped into my throat. I told myself if anyone woke up now, I was still leaving. He was snoring in the bed behind me, dead to the world. One arm hung off the side, fingers brushing the floor. Last night he used that same hand to lift her onto his lap. The image flashed again and my stomach twisted so hard I bent over. That was the moment I realized I could not sleep next to him again. I grabbed clothes without thinking about outfits, just things I could move in. Underwear, jeans, 2 shirts, nothing folded right, everything jammed and tight. Charger, keys, wallet, my hands moved faster than my brain. It did not feel like packing, it felt like escaping a fire. I kept listening for footsteps in the hallway and heard only my own breathing. My ring was the last thing, heavier than it should have been. I slid it off and turned it in my fingers once, twice. Part of me wanted to pocket it and pretend this was a break. Instead, I walked to the dresser and set it in the center. Seeing that small circle alone on the wood made my chest clench harder. I eased the bedroom door open and winced at the hinge. Jason was out cold on the couch, one arm over his face. Empty cups and cards were scattered around him like evidence. For a second I wondered what he would say if he woke. Would he defend his sister, or finally admit he saw too much? Lisa was nowhere in sight, thanks to whatever room she claimed. I pictured her sprawled out, satisfied, convinced she had won whatever game. That thought gave me just enough anger to keep moving my feet. I tiptoed past Jason, suitcase rolling behind me, wheels louder than gunshots. Every bump in the floor sounded like an alarm going off inside me. At the front door I paused with my hand on the lock. One twist and I would become the woman who walked out. One twist and nothing would ever go back to normal again. My fingers hovered there sweaty, and for a second I almost backed away. Then I remembered her in his lap while he told me to relax. I turned the lock and pulled the door open slow, then faster. Cool air hit my face and cleared my head a little. I stepped out, dragged the suitcase over the threshold and shut it behind me. No note, no dramatic speech, just the quiet click of wood meeting frame. I knew if I stayed for a goodbye, he would talk me down. The car beeped when I hit the unlock, somewhere between relief and panic. I threw the suitcase in the back, not caring how it landed. For a second I stood there with my hand on the roof. If he opened the door right then and called my name, I might cave. Nobody came, nobody called, the only sound was my own breathing. The engine turned over and my eyes filled so fast I could barely see. I backed down the driveway slow, terrified of waking the whole house. In the mirror the place looked peaceful and innocent, like a postcard. I knew what was inside though, I knew exactly what I was leaving. I turned onto the road and let the lake disappear behind the trees. The first few miles felt unreal, like I was driving someone else's life. My hands were locked around the wheel, knuckles bright and stiff. My phone buzzed once in the cup holder, and I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, a long vibration, this time voicemail. I pictured his face when he woke up and saw the empty bed. At a gas station off the highway, I finally pulled in too fast. The car rocked to a stop and I realized I was shaking. I sat there, engine off, forehead resting on the steering wheel. I could have turned around then, driven back, blamed everything on nerves. Instead I picked up my phone and opened the banking app. I do not know why that was the next move, honestly. Maybe I wanted to know what survival money I actually had. Maybe I wanted proof this was bigger than a drunken lap dance. Either way, the numbers loaded, and my throat went completely dry. Our shared account looked lower than it should have for that month. I scrolled through the recent charges, thumb flicking faster with each line. Groceries, gas, normal stuff, nothing strange at first, nothing loud. Then 3 entries jumped out at me like sirens. Hotel, same chain, different nights, all marked as checkout. The dates sat there in neat rows while my chest pounded. I tapped one and stared at the transaction detail like it might change. The first was a night he had sworn he was buried at work. The second lined up with a guy's hang where he crashed at Jason's. The third was 2 weeks before the lake trip, another supposed late shift. I actually said no out loud in the car, like that could undo it. I opened our message history and scrolled to those nights on my phone. My own texts glowed back at me, pathetic and soft. Let me know when you're heading home, I'll wait up. Crash if you're too tired, just call when you wake. Each one now read like permission he did not deserve. I went to the photos on my camera roll because I am masochistic. On one of those hotel dates, Lisa had posted a gym selfie in the group chat. Cute outfit, smug grin, caption about killing it on a rest day. He had answered with heart emojis, calling her unstoppable, burying me. I had seen it then and ignored the timing, now it slammed into place. The gas station parking lot blurred through my windshield when tears finally spilled. I pressed my fist against my mouth to keep the sound down. I was not even sure which part hurt the most right then. The hotel charges, the lap, the messages, or how familiar he felt while doing all of it. It felt like realizing the ground under our house had never been steady. My phone lit up again, this time with his name across the screen. I let it ring out once, twice, 3 full times, then stop. It started again immediately, stubborn, like he was hammering on a door. I watched it vibrate, almost answering just to ask about those charges. Instead I hit mute and tossed it onto the passenger seat. After a minute a text came through, then another, then a third. What the hell, where did you go? You left your ring here, this is insane. You better not be driving home just to prove a point. I stared at the bubble previews and felt my jaw clench so hard it hurt. I opened the messages and the thread jumped straight to the newest. Get back here so we can talk like adults, not teenagers. Another one arrived while I watched, the typing dots flashing. You are embarrassing me in front of Jason, this is childish. There it was again, his main concern, my effect on his image. I started typing, fingers flying without a plan. You embarrassed yourself letting her grind on you while I begged you to stop. I stared at the words, thumb hovering over send, heart racing. Then I deleted the whole thing line by line until the field was empty. He did not deserve my raw explanation in a text he would screenshot. More bubbles popped up, more desperate and wild now. You running away doesn't change the fact that nothing happened. She's like a sister, you twisted this all night. If you blow up our life because you're jealous, that's on you. He threw every angle in one paragraph: denial, guilt, blame, all of it. I locked the screen and finally got out of the car. Cold air slapped my face and made me catch my breath. I went inside, used the bathroom, splashed water over my face. In the mirror, I looked wrecked and wired at the same time. I almost did not recognize the woman who chose the door instead of the fight. Back in the car, I scrolled to a different contact, one I trusted. Mia, friend from long ago, the kind who texts once a month. My fingers flew before fear could catch up. Are you home? I need a place to land, it's bad. The three dots appeared almost immediately, like she had been waiting. Yeah, come over, no questions till you're ready, I'm here. Just those words made my throat close all over again. She sent her building code and a quick drive safe after that. No advice, no judgment, just instructions that sounded like a lifeline. I put the car in gear and pulled back onto the road. The drive to her place felt shorter than it probably was. My mind replayed the lake house couch on a loop every second. Her legs over him, his useless half-jokes, his choice to follow her outside. Then the bank app image would pop up over it, mocking me. By the time I turned into her lot, my NDS were numb. Mia opened the door before I finished knocking, wearing an old hoodie. She pulled me straight into a hug that knocked the air from my lungs. I did not cry right away, I just stood there stiff in her arms. Suitcase, ring, and that look, she murmured into my hair. Okay, so this is real bad, not a regular fight. She helped drag the suitcase in and kicked the door shut. We ended up in her small living room, me on the couch. She sat on the coffee table facing me, elbows on her knees. Do you want to talk now or stare at the wall first? I let out this weird half-laugh that almost turned into a sob. He let her crawl all over him while I begged him to stop. The words came out in pieces, jagged and furious and shaking. And when I finally snapped, he walked her outside like I overreacted. I did not say the hotel part yet, I was not ready. Even the surface stuff sounded insane when I heard it out loud. Mia's jaw tightened and her eyes went dark and steady. Who is she to him, exactly, besides a walking boundary issue? His best friend's sister, I answered, voice flat, eyes burning. She calls herself family, so nobody can challenge how she touches him. Saying that made something click in Mia's expression, like a puzzle piece. That's not family behavior, that's testing how far she can push. Her tone stayed calm, but there was heat underneath every word. And he keeps failing the test, over and over, with extra credit. I stared at my hands and finally let the hotel charges out. The second I mentioned them, her whole face changed. She did not scream or gasp dramatically, she just went quiet. That silence told me more than any performed outrage could have. How many nights? She asked after a moment, voice low. 3 that I can prove, maybe more. I stopped counting this morning. The room felt smaller after I said that number out loud. My phone buzzed again on the cushion, aggressive, insistent, relentless. I flipped it and new messages stacked over the old ones. You're overreacting, nothing happened with her, you're blowing up everything. You ghosting me like this is actually abusive, answer your husband. The switch from wounded to accusatory was so fast it made me dizzy. Mia read over my shoulder once and snorted, sharp and humorless. Ah yes, the classic move, accuse the person leaving of abuse. She pushed the phone back into my hand like it was dirty. You don't owe him a word right now, not one letter. Her voice steadied something inside me I did not know I still had. We set up a blanket on the couch as my temporary bed. She brought me water and a random snack I barely touched. We did not dissect every detail, not that first hour. We just existed in the same space while my phone kept lighting up. Each vibration felt smaller as the night wore on, and I did not answer. Hours later, when Mia went to her room, I stayed awake. I opened my notes app and stared at the empty screen. My fingers started moving without a real plan or outline. I ran away from home because my husband let his friend's sister treat his body like a toy. The title looked dramatic and petty, and also exactly right. I wrote down the dinner table, the couch, the lap, the dare. I wrote the hotel charges and the messages about me being overly strict. I typed every awful line where he mocked my boundaries to impress her. Then I wrote the moment I left my ring on his dresser. Seeing it all in one place felt worse and better at the same time. My phone buzzed one last time just after midnight with a long text. I woke up and you were gone, and this is cruel. You know I'd never actually do anything with her. Then another. Come home tomorrow, we'll set rules if that's what you need, just stop making a scene. He still cared more about the scene than the wound, even then. I did not answer, I just archived the entire thread in one swipe. I was not ready to block him, that felt too final, too sharp. But I could move the conversation away from the front of my screen. I could create one small pocket of quiet where his words did not dominate. It was a tiny move, but it felt like the first real boundary I set for myself. Lying there on Mia's couch, I did not suddenly become brave or sure. Part of me still wanted him to show up at the door begging. Part of me wanted him to confess everything and cut her out completely. A tired new part of me knew he probably never would. That new part was the one that had driven the car and turned the key. I wish I could end this by saying I filed for divorce the next day. Life rarely wraps up into clean arcs like that, especially real damage. What actually happened was slower, messier, full of back and forth. But this was the line. That night on the couch was when I stopped asking how to keep him and started asking how to keep myself.